Weather portion of Ag Week, I want to talk about the probable transition from El Nino to La Nina. There's a lot on the news about it. Some of it you can't believe. First of all, let's go back and explain briefly the El Nino. The trade winds across the Pacific are weaker or were weaker than is what we call average. This is what we had last winter. High pressure in the east, low pressure in the western parts of the tropical Pacific get a little weaker than usual. And what this does is the typical cold water, which upwells, comes up from below, brought about by the trade winds pulling the ocean currents to the west, that water tends to warm up. And if anything, the warm water spreads out across the tropical Pacific because of the weakening trade winds and the weakening ocean currents. La Nina looks actually like the opposite of that, because what happens in La Nina is the trade winds get stronger. And with those stronger trade winds, the old high pressure, low pressure systems across the Pacific, those in turn get stronger. So the upwelling cold water off the coast of South America gets colder and gets dragged out across the tropical region of the Pacific. And just like with La Nina, only differently, this changes the jet stream configuration, how strong it is, and it changes weather all around the world. But I don't want you to get the impression that La Nina is the opposite of El Nino. It doesn't mean the next winter is going to be the opposite of last winter. There are many other things that can influence the weather, and if anything, La Nina is less predictable. In fact, the change means less predictability, and this going from strong El Nino to La Nina this summer, this fall, means long-term forecasting is really going to be tough. Secondly, probably means we're going to have a colder winter, perhaps very cold winter next winter, but there are many other things that can influence that. And there is some potential for a drier than average summer throughout the Corn Belt and Northern Plains, but not necessarily drought, just maybe a bit drier than average. Hot weather in the Northern Plains this weekend, giving way to some scattered thunder showers and the return to a more typical pattern for the week ahead. We're seeing a weaker subtropical jet. The polar jet is no longer split into quite so many parts, and it's just a typical slightly warmer than average, slightly less stormy than average late spring weather pattern. We're going to see a few showers in the Midwest. The central part of the Midwest probably has the best chance. Up in the Northern Plains, it'll be a bit spottier. The Corn Belt, especially the eastern side, is looking fairly dry. As we move into the second week of the forecast, I am seeing another round of showers in the plains. The west is looking almost completely dry. The Midwest, especially down south, will be somewhat stormy, and there will be some opportunities for Memorial Day showers and thunder showers in parts of the upper Midwest and the Northern Plains, but not necessarily widespread heavy rain, and to the west will be a lot of dryness. So the potential is there for the Memorial Day weekend and into the first few days of June to be fairly warm and generally drier than average here across the north.